There are moments in life when the weight of sorrow feels insurmountable. When grief arrives, it often seems like an uninvited guest who stays longer than we would wish. It envelops us, grips us, and sometimes it makes us wonder if we will ever feel joy again. But let us remind ourselves, grief is not a punishment, nor is it a sign of weakness. It is, in its deepest form, a testament to our capacity to love. It is proof of the connections we have formed, the relationships that shaped us, and the lives we've shared. Grief is a natural response to loss, yet many of us are hesitant to fully embrace it when it arrives. It can feel like a foreign force, an unwelcome visitor in our lives, dragging us through emotional landscapes we feel unprepared for. But what if we understood grief not as something to fear, but as an essential part of the human experience? What if we saw it as a sign of our profound ability to connect, to love, to care deeply for something or someone outside of ourselves? If we can approach grief with this mindset, we might start to understand that it is not a burden to be avoided, but a necessary and beautiful part of what it means to be alive. When we grieve, we are reminded of the depth of our relationships, the connections we have formed, and the love we have shared. We grieve because something we cherished, whether a person, a place, a phase of life, or even an idea, has been taken from us. This pain that we feel in response is not a weakness or something inherently wrong. It is the natural consequence of love. The more we love, the greater our capacity for sorrow when that love is disrupted. This sorrow, however, is not an enemy. It is simply the other side of the coin of love, an inescapable counterpart to the joy and connection we experience when we are with those we care about. To deny grief is to deny a part of ourselves. When we try to push grief aside or cover it with distractions, we are only suppressing our own humanity. But real strength comes not from ignoring our emotions, but from facing them with courage. The very act of acknowledging grief, of allowing ourselves to feel it in all its fullness, is an act of resilience. It is a declaration that we are willing to face our pain, sit with it, and ultimately emerge from it, not unscathed, but wiser and more grounded. In the depths of grief, there is often a sense of isolation. We may feel as if we are the only ones who understand what it's like to lose something so precious. We may even feel that the world around us continues to move forward, indifferent to our suffering. It is at these times that we must remind ourselves that we are not alone. Grief is universal. It touches everyone, and while each person experiences it in their own unique way, we are all bound together by this shared human experience. It is in recognizing this connection with others, in acknowledging that grief is not something we endure in isolation, that we begin to heal. To understand that grief is a natural response to loss is to understand that it is part of the collective human journey. It is something we all must face in our own time, in our own way, and yet we can lean on each other for support, understanding, and compassion. Grief is not a linear process. It does not follow a set path with a clear beginning and end. Instead, it ebbs and flows, often returning when we least expect it. Just when we think we have moved through the worst of it, another wave of sorrow may wash over us, knocking us down again. And that is okay. Grief is not a problem to be solved, nor is it something that can be neatly packaged into a tidy process. It is a journey, a process of acceptance, adjustment, and in time healing. But healing does not mean forgetting or erasing the loss. Instead, it means learning to live with the loss, learning to find a new way of moving forward. We carry grief with us, but it no longer defines us. We carry it as we would carry a treasured memory, understanding that while it is heavy at times, it is also a testament to the love we experienced. In the face of grief, many of us search for quick fixes. We want to move past the pain as quickly as possible. to find the magic cure that will make us feel whole again. But the truth is, there is no shortcut to healing. Healing takes time, and it unfolds at its own pace. We cannot rush the process, nor can we force it. If we try to bypass grief, to hurry through it, we may end up stunting our own emotional growth. Instead of trying to eliminate the pain, we must allow ourselves to experience it fully. By sitting with our grief, by not running from it, we give ourselves the space to heal. The pain will lessen over time, not because we ignore it, but because we allow it to do its work on us. It is through grief that we also come to understand the impermanence of life. We cannot hold on to people, places, or things forever. Everything in this world is subject to change, and loss is a natural part of that cycle. While this realization can be unsettling, it also brings a deep sense of appreciation for what we have in the present moment. When we lose something, we are reminded of its value. The grief we feel after a loss is a sign of how much it meant to us. It is a reminder to cherish what we have while we have it, to hold it close and appreciate it fully. In this way, grief, while painful, is also a catalyst for greater gratitude and mindfulness. It teaches us to live in the present, to savor each moment, and to not take for granted the people and experiences that shape our lives. As we move through grief, we also come to understand the capacity of the human spirit to endure. There is an inherent strength within us that allows us to face the most difficult of circumstances. It is not a strength that comes from avoiding or suppressing our emotions, but from embracing them. It is the strength that allows us to walk through the fire of sorrow and emerge on the other side, not unscathed, but with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. This strength is forged through our struggles, through our willingness to face hardship and not turn away from it. Grief tests us. In the end, to experience grief is to experience life in its most raw and vulnerable form. By accepting grief, by allowing ourselves to fully experience it, we open ourselves to the possibility of healing and transformation. We allow ourselves to grow stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, not in spite of our grief, but because of it. Grief, in its deepest sense, is not something to be avoided or rushed through, but something to be fully embraced. The instinct to push away painful emotions is strong, yet it is in resisting the pain that we often prolong our suffering. It may seem counterintuitive to suggest that we should lean into our grief, but it is precisely through this acceptance that healing begins. The act of embracing pain does not mean wallowing in it indefinitely, but rather acknowledging it as a natural, necessary response to loss. When we try to avoid grief or suppress our emotions, some days may feel more overwhelming than others, and some moments may catch us off guard, but each experience with grief is a step toward understanding and resolution. The pain of grief, though intense, carries with it valuable lessons. It teaches us about the depth of our love and attachment, about the preciousness of life itself. We grieve because something important has been lost, and this loss forces us to reflect on the impact that thing or person had on us. It is only by feeling the full weight of this loss that we come to appreciate what it meant to us in the first place. Grief is the painful counterpart to love and connection, and in embracing it, we are reminded of the beauty that existed in the relationship we now mourn. In many ways, grief can be likened to a storm. At first, it overwhelms us, tossing us about with its force, and we may feel as if we will never find solid ground again. Yet, just as the storm eventually passes, so too does the intensity of grief begin to ebb. As we allow ourselves to feel the full range of our emotions, we begin to find the strength within us to move forward, even if it feels like a slow process. The storm may leave behind traces of its passage, memories, sadness, or unanswered questions, but it also leaves space for growth, for the rebuilding of our emotional landscape. This rebuilding process does not require us to erase the past or forget the loss we have experienced. It simply means that we allow ourselves to rebuild in a way that honors both the sorrow and the love we have felt. Healing from grief does not mean that we no longer feel the pain of loss. It means we have learned how to live with it. It means that, over time, we develop a different relationship to the grief, one that does not consume us, but coexists with our other emotions and experiences. By embracing grief, we also give ourselves permission to be vulnerable. We allow ourselves to admit that we are not invincible, that we cannot control everything, and that we are deeply affected by the people and experiences that shape our lives. Vulnerability, in turn, opens the door to greater emotional depth and connection. It allows us to share our grief with others, to lean on those who love us. It is through this shared vulnerability that we often find strength, not in isolation, but in connection. Grief also teaches us the importance of patience. Healing does not occur overnight, nor should we expect it to. Just as physical wounds take time to heal, so do emotional wounds. Each person's journey through grief is unique, and there is no set timeline for when one should feel better. Some days may feel like a setback, but that does not mean healing is not happening. Every day that we face our grief, that we allow ourselves to feel the emotions it stirs up, we are moving forward, even if it doesn't feel like it. Healing is not a race, but a gradual process that unfolds at its own pace. The process of embracing grief is not about seeking to control the pain, but rather about giving ourselves the grace to experience it fully. When we allow ourselves the space to mourn, we allow ourselves to honor the loss we have experienced. In doing so, we make room for healing. It is only by walking through the pain, by acknowledging it and accepting it as part of our human experience, that we ultimately find the strength to move forward with a deeper sense of understanding and resilience. Hope is often misunderstood. It is not simply a fleeting wish for better circumstances or a passive longing for change. Hope, in its truest form, is a steadfast belief in the possibility of renewal, even when the odds seem stacked against us. It is not a denial of reality or an escape from the pain we face, but rather the courage to see beyond it. True hope is not an abstract feeling that comes and goes with the tides of our emotions. It is a quiet, unwavering conviction that, despite the darkness of the present moment, light will eventually return. It is a recognition that every hardship carries within it the potential for growth, transformation, and new beginnings. In the face of grief, hope is not something that suddenly emerges when we snap our fingers or will it into existence. It is often a slow, quiet flame that flickers weakly at first, almost imperceptible in its early stages. When we experience loss, we may feel as if hope is lost entirely, consumed by the overwhelming sorrow that has taken hold of us. In these moments, it can be difficult to see beyond the pain. Yet, even in the depths of despair, hope remains, quietly, waiting for the right time to re-emerge. It is in the moments when we least expect it, when we feel the most broken, that hope can slip in, like a whisper in the dark, reminding us that there is more to come. Hope does not mean ignoring our grief or pretending that everything is fine when it's not. It does not demand that we put on a brave face or rush through the pain in an effort to appear strong. Instead, hope is about holding space for the reality of our emotions, while also acknowledging that there is something beyond the present suffering. It's about recognizing that while grief may feel all-encompassing in the moment, it is not permanent. The intensity may ebb and flow, and eventually we will find ourselves on the other side of it, having learned and grown through the experience. Hope reminds us that we do not have to remain in the shadows forever, that, even though the night is long, the dawn will come. Hope also involves faith, not in the sense of religious faith, but faith in the process of healing itself. It requires trust that the sorrow we feel now will not last forever, that the pain will eventually transform into something more manageable, and that we will once again find joy in life. This kind of hope is not rooted in wishful thinking or idealistic fantasies. It is a grounded belief that as long as we allow ourselves the time and space to heal, we will eventually emerge from our grief stronger, wiser, and more resilient than we were before. The presence of hope does not mean that we must feel joyful or optimistic all the time, even in the face of great loss. It's not about forcing ourselves to feel better before we're ready, or pretending that things are fine when they are not. Hope, in this sense, is not the absence of pain. It is the willingness to accept that pain while still believing in the possibility of healing. It is the quiet knowing that even in the darkest moments, something good can emerge. This could be the strength we discover within ourselves, the support we find from others, or the new perspectives we gain through our suffering. Hope doesn't promise that everything will be easy, but it assures us that there will be something on the other side of the pain, something meaningful, something transformative, something worth moving. One of the most profound aspects of hope is that it is often nurtured through small, seemingly insignificant moments. When we are in the midst of grief, we may not be able to see the big picture, or imagine a future where we are no longer consumed by sorrow. But hope often grows through the quiet, incremental steps that we take each day, whether it's waking up in the morning, allowing ourselves to cry when we need to, reaching out for support when we feel alone, or finding moments of peace in the midst of chaos. These small acts of resilience, though they may feel insignificant at the time, are what nourish hope. They remind us that even in our most vulnerable moments, we are still moving forward, still living, still holding on to the belief that we can heal. The presence of hope also invites us to reframe our perspective on grief. It encourages us to see grief not as a permanent state, but as a process, one that, although painful, holds the potential for transformation. Grief often challenges us to reconsider what truly matters in life. It forces us to examine our values, our priorities, and our relationships. It makes us confront our own mortality and the impermanence of everything around us. In this sense, grief is not just something to endure, but something that can teach us profound truths about ourselves and the world we inhabit. Hope, in this context, is the belief that through the suffering we can emerge with a deeper understanding of life, one that enriches our existence and enables us to live more fully. Another crucial aspect of hope is that it is not a solitary journey. While grief can feel isolating, hope often thrives in connection. It is through our relationships with others that hope is nurtured and sustained. When we grieve, it can be easy to withdraw from the people around us, to feel that no one understands what we're going through. Yet, hope is often rekindled through the compassion and support of those who walk beside us. Whether it's a friend who listens without judgment, a family member who holds us when we cry, or a community that rallies around us, hope is often reignited in the presence of others. We find that when we share our pain, it becomes lighter, and as we share in the pain of others, we come to realize that we are not alone in our struggles. This shared experience of grief and the mutual support that arises from it is a powerful force for hope. Hope, therefore, is not an isolated or individual experience. It is something that is shared, nurtured, and cultivated within the context of our relationships with others. It grows through the kindness we offer each other, the strengths we draw from each other, and the belief that together we can overcome the most challenging circumstances. In the end, hope is not just about an individual's journey through grief, but about the collective resilience of a community. It is the belief that no matter how broken we may feel, together we have the strength to heal, to rebuild, and to move forward. Healing from grief is often thought of as something that simply happens with time. While time can play a role, healing is much more complex. It is an active, ongoing process, not a passive state that we fall into. To heal from grief, we must allow ourselves to engage deeply with our emotions, not hide or suppress them. We must allow ourselves the grace to feel, to mourn, to cry, and to express our sorrow in ways that are true to our individual experiences. Healing comes not from avoiding pain, but from walking through it, step by step, at our own pace. Healing requires patience, patience with ourselves and with the process. There is no set timeline for how long it should take to heal from a loss. Grief doesn't work like that. Some days will feel heavier than others, and some moments will feel as though we have made no progress at all. But healing is not about rushing through the pain to reach some destination. It is about moving with it, acknowledging it, and giving ourselves the time and space to grieve. We must trust that the pain, while intense in the moment, will eventually ease, even if it doesn't seem like it at times. Healing in this sense is not linear. It's a winding path, sometimes clear, and other times full of unexpected turns. We might feel as though we're taking steps backward, but even these moments are part of the process. Healing is not about getting to the end. It's about learning how to walk through the journey. Part of healing is also about self-compassion. When we are in the throes of grief, we are often our own harshest critics. We may tell ourselves that we should be over it by now, or that we shouldn't be feeling so sad. This kind of internal judgment can prevent us from healing. We must be kind to ourselves, allowing ourselves to feel whatever emotions arise without the added weight of guilt or shame. Grief is not something we can control, nor is it something that can be hurried along by self-criticism. We must allow ourselves to be where we are, to grieve in our own way and in our own time. This compassion is not just for the grief itself, but also for the process of healing, which often comes with unexpected ups and downs. Equally important in the healing process is the act of seeking support. Grief can make us feel isolated, as if no one truly understands our pain. But the truth is, we do not have to carry it alone. Whether it's a friend, family member, therapist, or support group, sharing our grief with others can lighten its burden. There is power in vulnerability, the willingness to admit that we cannot go through it all on our own. When we share our sorrow, we allow others to hold it with us, to offer their understanding, empathy, and compassion. This shared experience doesn't make the pain disappear, but it does offer us a sense of connection, reminding us that we are not alone in our suffering. Healing also involves letting go, though this can be one of the most difficult aspects of the process. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or erasing the loss. It means learning how to move forward while still honoring the memory of what we've lost. It means finding a way to integrate the loss into our lives without letting it define us. In this way, healing is about finding a balance. It's about remembering the love we had and the significance of what was lost, while also creating space for new experiences, new connections, and new growth. Letting go allows us to open ourselves to life once again, to continue living fully, even if the loss remains a part of us. Healing from grief also requires an openness to change. Loss often brings with it a profound sense of disruption. Our world as we knew it has shifted. Healing is not just about restoring life to what it was. It's about creating a new version of life that incorporates the lessons learned from our grief, our love, and our loss. Throughout the healing journey, it's important to acknowledge that we will never be the same as we were before the loss. Grief changes us. It shifts our perspective, our priorities, and our understanding of life. But this does not mean that healing is unattainable. Instead, it means that healing is about transformation. We may carry the marks of grief with us, but they need not be scars. They can be reminders of the love we've experienced and the resilience we've gained. Healing is not the removal of the pain, but the creation of something new, something that embraces both the beauty and the sadness of our journey. Ultimately, healing is about reclaiming our ability to live in the face of loss. It is about acknowledging the pain, sitting with it, and allowing it to pass through us rather than define us. It's about finding a way to integrate the grief into the fabric of our lives without letting it overshadow everything else. Healing is not the end of our grief, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where we can continue to honor our losses while living fully in the present.